Yet another teacher has fired a gun in school. This time there were injuries. In fact, 3 students injured. And this relates to sort of a follow-up story. Last week I told you that in Georgia, a teacher barricaded himself inside of a classroom and fired his gun when the school principal was approaching the classroom. And fortunately, didn't hit anybody. Teacher eventually arrested without further incident. And we have another one of these stories. This one relates to a teacher named Dennis Alexander in Meredith, California, who fired a pistol inside of class while reportedly either lecturing about public safety or teaching students how to disarm someone with a gun, which raises more questions than it answers, actually. 3 students were injured. Nobody died. The gun was pointing at the ceiling when the teacher fired it. Bullet fragments bounced off the ceiling and hit a student in the neck. Student's going to be okay. And then 2 other students were hit not by bullet fragments, but by debris caused by the firing of the gun. And those are also minor injuries. So this one is already getting super complex, right? First question is the teacher allowed to have a gun on school grounds? And the answer is unclear because teachers aren't supposed to be armed. But this teacher happens to also be a reserve police officer for Sand City Police in California. And there are exceptions to the no guns on school campus, on school property rules for law enforcement. But what about part-time law enforcement? Does it apply if you are sometimes part-time law enforcement, but you're there as a teacher and not as a cop? I guess we're going to see. But until they figure out whether or not he's allowed to have a gun, he's on administrative leave. But I want to get to really what the other question is here. I've talked about how really an accidental shooting is a negligent discharge of a firearm. So he's obviously going to be charged, right, with negligent discharge of a firearm. Well, maybe not. The problem is how the California negligent discharge law is written. This is Penal Code 246.3. And it says under California Penal Code, you commit the crime of negligent discharge of a firearm if you willfully discharge a firearm in a grossly negligent manner, which could result in someone's injury or death. Accidental shootings, by definition, are not willful, and thus I am not expecting there to be charges here. And whether or not there are charges, whether or not the law was broken here, isn't it very clear that arming teachers is a terrible idea? I mean, this was a reserve police officer and teacher who injured 3 students by accidentally firing his gun. And people are talking about arming teachers. And the other really strange thing that I alluded to earlier is that most of the reports are saying, the question was, why did the guy have a firearm anyway? Most of the reports say he was in the middle of teaching public safety in the class. But there's a couple of reports that say he was teaching students how to disarm a gunman. Which, number one, why is that something that you would be teaching in school to begin with? And number 2, why do you need to do that with a loaded gun? Like, even if we say, okay, we're going to put aside the analysis of why this is something the guy was teaching, why would you be teaching that with a loaded gun? How is it even possible that this is going on? I don't really understand it. But there's certainly more than we've learned so far here. And obviously, there's only one solution here, which is we have to get rid of schools altogether. No, I'm sorry, that's stupid. We need to arm the students to defend themselves from the teachers, but keep the schools.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't cautious enough to know that the gun was loaded. Maybe there was one in the chamber.
Yep.
At least he was cautious enough not to point the gun at someone or at the wall across from him.
I guess.
Because this could have been a lot worse.
For all we know, at some point, he did point the gun at someone or at the wall across the way. And eventually, by sheer luck or odds, I don't know what you want to call it, it discharged when it was pointed up at the ceiling. But I mean, just think about, this was a discharge into the ceiling and 3 students were injured. Fortunately, fortunately, none of them super seriously, and only one of them even had what we would consider more than minor injuries. But that's an accidental gunshot at the ceiling. Imagine the degree of chaos that could be wreaked with these guns in schools if the firearm is pointed almost anywhere but the ceiling.
And he perhaps was teaching the students how to disarm a gunman.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine that demonstration had him moving around and ducking and jumping, and the gun would be pointing in a whole bunch of different directions.
I can't even imagine.
So it's good that he pointed it at the ceiling, at least at the end.
Yeah, congratulations. You didn't actually shoot anyone directly. Only bullet fragments hit a kid. Please, let's just move away from this idea of arming teachers. Today's program is sponsored in part by Celsius, a new global peer-to-peer financial platform that connects holders of cryptocurrency assets with borrowers, and it will also allow crypto holders to earn interest on their assets in the form of coins or to get US dollar loans against their crypto assets. This is a model for a project with a ton of demand for what Celsius will do. They just added to their team Syed Fazli, the former CTO of Bloomberg, and the team at Celsius says that they're doing this to bring a new wave of financial products to the market designed to always do what's in the best interests of its members instead of trying to make as much profit as possible, like the usual big players in the financial world that we talk about all the time. Their token will be used for its actual purpose virtually from the outset. And you can learn more at celsius.network/crowdsale. In the US, it's open only to accredited investors, and you can sign up at celsius.network/crowdsale. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research and due diligence before making any financial decision.